Just let everyone clear out. Before we start, just let everyone clear out that's shuffling along. Oh yeah, we need that. Nice one. Hey Shane.
Hey brother, come the whole space.
Thanks, bro. Oh, I feel nice that it cleared out a bit. I can see faces and actually tune in a bit. So I'm going to start with a story. And there's going to be lots of stories and questions that I'm going to sort of pose to everyone. And I hope you're okay with me walking around. I'm a little bit nervous. Don't present as a profession or anything. I tattoo people, so. Nice. Yeah, so I think it was back in 2013 or 2014. I was on a trip traveling through Central America, South America. And I flew into Medellin in Colombia, and I was picked up by a friend's auntie's partner. So I was staying with family friends. And Buyako, who picked me up, he's a detective there. And it was like I was a precious package, and he was on really high alert. And I'm there in tourist mode, just going, camera out, just trying to take in the sights. But he was really aware of our surroundings, our environment, and he seemed like he was quite concerned for me, being a detective in this place, and me being the young, sort of green traveller that I was. And in the two weeks I spent with him, he was really trying to sort of pass on some advice and some guidance for my trip. And I thought I was taking it on, Anyway, 2 weeks later, I sort of disembarked from being under Buyako's wing, and I might make my way to the coast of Venezuela. I'm still in Colombia though, a place called Santa Marta, a little town called Taganga. And I get there, it's a really small fishing town. I drop my bag off at the hostel, and another guy's checked in at the same time. He's like, let's go down to the beach. It's a great idea. So we walk down to this little beach, and there's a few people there. It's really short, probably not much longer than here. So we just walk along, we get to the headland, and then we can see another beach. We thought, all right, we'll go around to that one. Even less people there, maybe one person. We walk along it, and we get to another headland, and we can see a third beach. It looks beautiful, white sand, turquoise ocean. We'll go around to that one. So we walk up this goat track, and we're about halfway around, and that's when it happened. We got ambushed by a bunch of people that were all armed, knives and machetes, and wearing balaclavas. And very quickly and tactically, they kind of stripped us down, covered our heads up, tied our arms behind our backs, and they walked us up into the bush. And luckily for me, I didn't speak very good Spanish. Mateus, who was with me, did. So he was in hostage negotiations. And they walked us in anyway, they left us up there. And I became really present. For whatever reason, I was reading that book, Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now, on the plane over. And again, I thought I was taking it in, but in that moment, I suppose someone skydiving or someone in an actual fight, it's you're really hyper aware. And so all I could see was a little bit out from under this thing over my head. I think it was my t-shirt. And I can even remember the details of these guys' fingernails, and some of the tattoos they had and stuff. So I just became really hyper aware, knowing that I just need to be present and see what decision I might need to make. It was really interesting, that presence. Anyway, long story short, there was a moment when they left. I don't know what they had said to Mateus, but I was like, where'd they go? And he said, they told us to wait here, not to go anywhere or they'll kill us. And I was like, but where are they? And he's like, I don't know. And I was like, got him to take the thing off my head, and they weren't there. So I was like, we're going, quickly got ourselves out, and we ran back around the beaches to the hostel. And we get to the hostel and we explain what just happened. And the lady goes, oh, yeah, here's a map. And she gave us a map. And she drew a circle around the hostel, you know, and put a little dot in the middle of the circle where the hostel was. And she goes, yeah, don't go outside this circle. And we were, you know, there was one beach in that circle at that town. And we're like, oh, would have been useful to have that map before we left, you know, not saying that to her or blaming her, just like the thought. You know, we were just on our way. We didn't ask for a map or anything. And so in that moment, especially on reflection, I've realized just how important it is to pay attention, to see what guidance is available to you on any journey that you're on, and that, you know, maps are really useful. Maps are great, you know, and mapping is a big part of what I do. I'm pressing these buttons. Mapping is a big part of what I do with anyone that I work with when I'm tattooing them. And so hopefully this talk is going to provide a little bit of a map for you around what your tattoo process might have to offer you as you sort of move forward through your life, through your journey, how you might be able to use it. And how it might act as a bridge to the afterlife. That's the main topic I want to explore. And in order to explore these two topics of tattooing and the afterlife, you know, they seem like pretty different areas of investigation. They're actually really intrinsically linked, and most cultures knew this pretty thoroughly. But, you know, in our contemporary tattoo industry, it doesn't get much thought. And so in order to bridge these two concepts, what we're going to need to do is actually build up either side of it. So first, we're going to just unpack tattooing, what tattooing is, how it relates to your life, you know, before we get to that threshold, afterlife threshold. And then we're going to also contemplate the afterlife a little bit. You know, that's a big question mark, that one. It's hard to really know. But again, there's lots of maps, there's lots of guidance that's out there, so we'll explore that as well. And then once we've built those two pillars up, we can hopefully bridge it. We can see what the actual connection might be. I don't have answers. I'm not going to say to people, this is how your tattoos influence your afterlife. This is what the afterlife is. I'm just going to explore it with you. And, you know, you can come up with your own conclusions. See if you think there's any connection between the two of them. So by the end of the talk, hopefully your perspective, my aim anyway, is that your perspective on tattooing, the tattoos that you have, maybe the tattoos you do, I don't know, tattoos generally that other people have, is deeper. You know, we get somewhere that's more substantial in how you relate to tattooing beyond just the surface, you know, beyond the superficial layer of just the artwork. And so, linking to these maps again, when I started reflecting on my own tattoo process at a certain point, which I'll get to, I realized I'd been getting tattooed for at least 10 years without really comprehending exactly what I was doing, and that each time I was getting tattooed, they were impacting my trajectory through time. So I was getting tattooed in a way that was changing my course, was changing where I was going. It was kind of like my tattoo process was mirroring the tourists walking along the beach in Colombia. You know, I was just randomly getting tattooed, thinking, you know, I can just keep going this way aimlessly and everything will be okay. And so it's been a bit of a process, probably 7 years now, on the back of that, of retracing my steps and trying to get back to the desk and say, this is what happened. Maybe someone can give me a map. And that's how I work with mapping. You know, a lot of the mapping process with people's tattoos is this reflective investigation and questioning on what your tattoos are and why you got them, and getting a full ledger, you know, getting a full picture of what your tattoos might be. So the contemporary tattoo culture, as it stands, most of the access points we have to tattooing, especially like in Australia, not everywhere, but a high percentage, it's just tattooing. It's just a tattoo shop. You go in there and they want to know what it is that you're going to get. Sometimes they'll ask why, but there isn't a lot of consideration. They just want to do the tattoo. You know, the tattoo industry is this slipstream. The amount of conversations that I have with people and the stories I hear where they weren't even intending to get tattooed, but they go into a shop and they ask a question, or, you know, they're somewhere and someone can tattoo them, and these processes, they end up just being pulled into these processes and getting tattooed without a deeper contemplation. So I call that the Just Tattoo Club. And some people think that's all there is to it. You know, there isn't anything other than the tattoo, or it's not important to consider the other layers. And that's fine. You know, like, the tattoo industry has some beautiful artists doing beautiful things, and that's all well and good. But what else is tattooing other than the art? And the answer to the question, I think, is that it's obviously more. There's more to it. They're the story of your journey through life. We'll just start with that premise. I know not everyone will think that, but it's pretty simple, it's pretty comprehensive. And it definitely seems to be the case when I'm working with people, when I'm doing this mapping, when I'm helping them get tattooed. So the story of your journey through life, that gives us access to two really important dimensions. One, the story, firstly, that's narrative, right? Narration. And narrative is the lens through which we see the world. It's how we see ourselves, right? The stories we tell ourselves, about the world, about our place in it. So the story gives us access to identity. And last year at Tattoo Pathway, we did a bunch of surveys and analysed all of these different comments and forums, like the Reddit Tattoo Advice Forum, to see what it was that people were experiencing. We focused on meaning making, motivations, tattoo regret. And we found that I think it was about the 70th percentile of people report that they actually experience a change in their self-perception as a result of getting tattooed. So there's a very real link, you know, through that story, through that narration aspect, to how you see yourself and how people see you and how you feel about yourself. So there's one aspect of the more. The other dimension that we get in this premise here is navigation. So the story of your journey. A journey is about navigation, right? It's about movement, traveling from one place to the other. And navigation's like a big bucket. There's lots of things you can pull out of that. But if we think about direction, where you're traveling, orientation, where you are, where you've been, where you're going, you know, and how that plays out, how that gets recorded every time you get tattooed. It's another really important aspect of the more. And so if we think about those two pieces, we have who you are, where you've been, where you're going. That's a pretty full picture. It's a pretty full picture. And that's being recorded and added to or revisited every single time that you get tattooed. There's an opportunity to, there's an elevated moment every time you get tattooed to access your story, to reflect on your journey, and to add a piece of influence, to add a perspective that's going to alter your trajectory as you move in to the tattoo process and out of it. I like to think of it like, if you picture a rocket taking off, right, you can sort of like dot this line, the trajectory of where the rocket's going to go. And it's like, in any moment, we have that line for ourselves. You know, most of the time we run on this automatic mode network. We're not really making decisions all the time. You know, they're sort of predetermined to a degree based on prior decisions. And you need to take the moment to make a choice. To actually make a choice, you need to sort of like stop, you need to reflect, engage this chief executive mode network. And I think this is what ceremonies, rituals, things that are sort of elevated out of the everyday allow us to do. It's like you actually get to make a choice. And so when you move into a tattoo process, and this is on lots of levels, you know, the cognitive network's just one of them, that little dotted line will change when you get tattooed. And so you walk out of this process and you're changed, not just physically. The actual direction that you're moving through time has been altered as a result of getting the tattoo. And there's always going to be people that sort of don't agree with this sort of thing. I'll keep bumping this. They might say that your tattoos don't mean anything. What if they don't mean anything? What if I don't believe that tattoos actually mean much? I can get a tattoo and it's not going to influence me. Again, I'm not gonna answer that and say that it's wrong. You can believe that if you want, but I'll just leave the question hanging there and see if you still feel that way by the end of this talk. Got a photo up of my wife's tattoos with our third bub, Mally. And that's just a depiction of someone who didn't have any tattoos. She didn't have any when we met, didn't want any. And yeah, just tracking her story, that's slowly grown over about 8 years. And they're these beautiful patterns, and they really represent who she is. There's no layer of trying to add something or be something other than who she is. It's just unfolded for her. And there's a funny thing, when I first put a photo up of her shoulders, there was no tattoo there except for this one piece on her shoulder on Instagram. I actually had other artists I know come to me and say hey, people have asked me for this tattoo, because we have this tendency to mimic nature. It's a normal thing. And I think it might be one of the issues with the contemporary tattoo culture is, our experience is so porous at the moment. We're just influenced through screens, especially by all of these bits of information that don't really make sense or help us understand who we are more fully. And so we go about getting them tattooed. After that point, I didn't put any more of her tattoos up online. Okay, so we have the tattoo, we have the story, the journey. There's two functions of tattooing if we build on that premise, the story of our journey through life, that I have realized are being carried out in every tattoo session for everybody, regardless of how you see it. Regardless of how intentional you're being, these two pieces are happening. One of them is record keeping. So this is seeing the tattoo as information, not just as art. And the story of how that piece landed for me was, I was in Brisbane, or just outside of Brisbane. I'd travelled up. I was the driver for this old Native American fella who ended up being a teacher of mine. He needed a lift to go to this council meeting. I'd just done a sweat lodge with him. So I drove him up, and I ended up being in lots of sweat lodges over 2 weeks. If you don't know what a sweat lodge is, it's like a little sauna made of sticks on the dirt, with hot rocks. It's dark in there. Play drums and sing. And while we were in this last lodge, or one towards the end, he turned to me and he said, "You're a record keeper." And he wasn't trying to speak to me specifically. I was in this space, and it was more a transmission of what's taking place. As anyone who's tattooing, or anyone who's getting tattooed, part of that process is this record keeping. And it really impacted me. It took a long time to fully unpack that. It's taken years and years. But I did. I took it, and I was like, this is a pretty precious piece of information here that I haven't considered. And I really unpacked it. And so what we have when we get tattooed, the different elements, we have the skin, and we cut it, right? So there needs to be an incision to get tattooed. And when you cut the skin and you work with blood, you start to activate this process that's a regenerative process. So very naturally, the body, whether it's a tattoo or not, when it gets cut, it starts recording. It starts memorizing at the side of the wound, trying to work out what's gone into the body, if anything has. So it knows what's going in, and so it can respond in an optimal way in the future. And when we tattoo, we also put in carbon, right? We put in black material. You can use color too, right? But the base is just carbon and water. Carbon also holds memory. I remember talking to an indigenous guy up near Boolumba Creek. He was getting in an argument with another lady because they'd used a space that was for women's ceremony to just have a fire for some campers, and they cooked some food there and stuff. And I said afterwards to dinner one, I was like, what are you guys arguing about? She's like, there's information in the fire. Every time we light the fire, the information that's in the carbon's still there, And so that fire held information from last week when we did our women's ceremony, and this fella's just gone and let someone cook their baked beans there. Now that's there too, And I didn't fully get it at the time. I'm starting to understand more and more, slowly, bit by bit. So we have an incision in the skin, we have the carbon, and then we have water. Water holds memory too, right? You all know that. You've probably seen Masaru Emoto's stuff, the water experiments. So we've got 3 parts to a tattoo, just the physical part of the tattoo, that are really obviously a record-keeping technology. That's what the function is. So record-keeping, always part of it. And the other one is navigational aid. We've talked about the journey side. So the story is the record, and the journey side gives us this navigational aid or this navigational assistance. And basically what it's saying is that the tattoo, the information, bears weight on you as you move forward through time, right? We already spoke about it, but it became really obvious to me when I started looking at language in cultures that have had tattoos for a really long time. So the word tattoo, T-A-T-T-O-O, was coined in 17-something by Captain James Cook after going through Tahiti. They had the word tatau, which is an onomatopoeia of the sound, of them tapping and tattooing. And so that lands in our English dictionary, and it means permanent pigment in the skin. Very bland, very dry, very physical. That's just what it is. But then the language that these older cultures had, still have, still use, speaks to so much more than the physical process. And so I think it's in the Philippines. It literally means navigational tool when you get tattooed. I think it might be potentially in New Zealand. There's this concept in some of the language around it being like blueprints, so like these instructions on how to build something. And there's also the remembrance. Remembering something comes into language in older cultures too. So we can look at the language and see that obviously people were engaging with tattoos for the function of guiding them forward through their journey, through this life. And then if we think about these cultures in the context of the time, so like we have the relationship we have because of our current day and age, the context we're in, the perspective we inherit. If we think about where tattooings come from in these cultures, tattooing was a really supernatural thing. It wasn't just the physical. And that's because they were living a supernatural experience of the world. There was no question. Like a convention like this would be hilarious. It's like, because they didn't separate out the supernatural and the natural. Their experience was just very connected to things beyond them, to the metaphysical. And so they obviously were thinking about their tattooing and the navigational aspect beyond the physical, into the subtle realms, into the metaphysical. How it relates to their ancestry, how it relates to their mythologies, to their different creation stories. And so we land in this place where we can look at tattooing and go, well, again, what's the more? If it's not just a tattoo, what's the more? The obvious one is that it's a process of transformation. It's a process of changing. Transformation's moving from one state into another state. We've got that journey concept. You're moving from one place to another. And so the tattoo, even just physically, you get tattooed, you're one way, you're physically another way, you've changed. Okay, that process has taken place. But when you open the skin up, you're also opening up a doorway into change. You're inviting change into all these other layers of your being, all of the layers actually. So there's psychological change that happens. This is like adding to the story. There's emotional changes that happen, and there's spiritual changes that happen as well. So it's a process of change and transformation. And there's so much to it, but trying to keep it kind of brief. And so what your tattoos mean is really important. And I often get people that are motivated when they see something I talk about or what I'm doing, and they want to have intentional and meaningful tattoos. And I'm always pointing to the fact that if you want a meaningful tattoo, well, then you need to be living a meaningful life. We're trying to sort of remove the separation and the fracture of tattooing, lots of other things too, but people seem to segment things. So if you want a meaningful tattoo, you need to be living a meaningful life. If you're living intentionally, taking intentional action all the time, if you're paying attention to what you're doing, to who you are, to your story, trying to work things out, trying to heal things, trying to work out what your place is, what the world is, then your tattoos very naturally are going to correlate to that process for you. They're going to represent things to you. They're going to introduce you to things that you don't know about yourself or about the world in a very real way. And I think that's probably how it's been used in the past. So meaningful life. Just to start to get away from the tattooing and start to move towards the life and afterlife concept. I don't know if anyone's heard of John Vervaeke before. Dr. John Vervaeke. He's in, I think, America or Canada. I took a course of his last year. He's a cognitive scientist, and his last book was Awakening to the Meaning Crisis. And so he talks about some similar things to what I'm touching on here, but from this cog science lens. And he's not very spiritual, but that's okay, because he has some really, really deep information on how we know things, back-end functioning. And his research revealed that ritual, so the course I did was the cognitive science of ritual. Ritual is a really valuable process for us to understand who we are and to understand the world. It's a great tool. It's a really effective tool. It's better than going to school, actually, if you just participate in well-formulated and proper-fitting rituals. And so there's 4 requirements for meaning, for something to be meaningful, to have a meaningful life. One of them is coherence. So the thing you're doing has to make sense. It has to fit into a proper structure that you understand. And he uses video game analogies. So he goes, this is the rule of the video game. So the thing you're doing has to fit into those rules. And so when we think of the inherited perspective of tattooing, the contemporary tattoo culture, it's no wonder that people are ending up with all of these different tattoos that clash or don't make sense or don't feel right, because access to tattooing is very easy and there aren't many rules there at all. And there's a side of it that's great. We're sort of opening to tattooing in a way that has been a bit restricted for a couple of generations. But also there's just zero guidance there. It's one of the things we've realized through the surveys. People are lacking guidance, and I don't claim to have all the answers, but I'm definitely wanting to sort of help set up a little bit of a pathway. That's what we're calling this, the tattoo pathway. It's trying to give people a little bit of a guide rail, one that just might provide a little bit of direction, a little bit of safety. The second thing is purpose. So once it makes sense, the thing that you're doing also needs to contribute to an overarching plan or goal. It's the story of your life. It's a meaningful life. It's not just a moment. It's not just an experience. It's not just a spiritual retreat and then back into the everyday and that was isolated from it. Things all need to contribute to this overarching goal. And so in a video game, that would be the quest. You've got the rules of the quest, and then you've got the quest itself. This is the thing we're doing. And then each piece, in order for it to be meaningful, contributes to that overarching goal. The third part, significance. And that means that it actually has to matter. You actually have to want to play the game. You can't be like over the game and not want to be playing it. Rules and a quest there, but I don't really care. It's not significant to you. So for it to be meaningful, you also have to care. And the last piece of the 4, I think this is probably the most important. Let's see what you think. Is mattering. And when John Vervaeke said this, and he's like, mattering, it's like, what does that even mean? And it's about something actually contributing and being meaningful beyond yourself. So it moves from like this selfish pursuit, this intentional act that's for you, that just fills you with yourself and sort of breaks this thing down. You know, it starts to speak to that paradox of like losing yourself to find yourself, you know? And so for something to be meaningful, it needs to be seen beyond you as also being something that's purposeful and significant. So it's not just you running around telling your own spiritual story. It's something that's beyond that. Okay, so I think we've built up the pillar of tattoos being more and they're linked to your life enough that we can move on to the afterlife. And so the first question that I'll pose, is there an intelligible creator or a divine pattern that has awareness, that's perceiving us, you know, that wants to know you, that can feel things? And does what we do in our relationship to this experience, does it have some type of feedback? You know, is there an agent in an arena feedback happening? Or is it all just happening and nothing matters? You know, this meaningless thing. Again, I'm not going to answer it, but we will move into 5 minutes. Oh, really? Okay. Decision tree, afterlife. Let's get there. Let's get to the afterlife. Decision tree. So the first question would be like, we die, does anything continue? Yes or no? If you think no, you're probably in the wrong place. If you think yes, the question is, what continues? Is it our soul? Is it our spirit? Is it our essence? Because it's not our body, right? It's not our body. So, and then the question would be like, with that thing that continues, we'll just call it essence, you know? The difference between soul and spirit, we're splitting hairs there. So our essence will continue. The vessel, the body that we're in, doesn't continue. Okay, so where does it go? Does it go to the same place or does it go to a different place? The same place, that's reincarnation, right? It's coming back here. And if you come back here, it's like, again, our trajectory. It's like, are you 1 degree this way, you're having a better experience, or you're having a worse experience, up or down, you know, can go one way or the other. If you go somewhere different, where are you going that's different? Again, is it somewhere that's like up from here, down from here? Is it better? Is it worse? You know, we can map these this decision tree and these paths that we might experience when we die. But the thing that continues isn't the flesh, right? Now, I've got up here the weighing of the heart from one of the temples in Egypt. I'm just going to talk about a couple of the maps and the guides that we have access to. So the Egyptian one's pretty old. In this one, you have Anubis weighing the heart. See, the heart's that little vase. It's called the ebb. And so they leave the heart in the body in Egypt. Hey, it's the only thing they don't take out. And they use this hieroglyph of the vase. And they say that the vase contains all of your unconscious thoughts and feelings and desires. And that gets weighed against the feather of Mut. Mut's more like a cosmic principle. When Ra steps off the boat onto Mut, chaos becomes order. And so it's that which is straight and truth. So your heart gets measured against the feather of Mut, you know, to see if you're true. So now we've got the heart, and we can see these hieroglyphs on it, right? The heart becomes this symbol for the vessel we're talking about. So the body doesn't go on. The essence does, the thing that's within it. It's within the heart. The end of days through the Christian lens. You know, if we don't go eschatological, there's the weighing of the heart, that's an Egyptian one. The Christian lens gives us this great white throne judgment. You know, I think this one here, you know. And when we look at these stories, they're both pointing to a similar thing. That this body doesn't continue, but the essence does. And the essence is contained within the heart. And if we go back to like the Masaru Emoto thing, you know, where he's riding on a vessel and it's influencing the structure of the water or the essence that's in there, I started thinking like, surely what we write on our skin then is having some impact on our essence. It's informing it in some way, you know. vibrationally. Yeah? And so maybe what's in our heart, the shape of what's in our heart, we can see it on our skin. Maybe there's some type of a reflection there. Maybe if we look at the tattoos and we read the stories, of our journey through time, if we look at that, maybe there's a reflection of the shape of our essence, of the thing that might cross over that threshold when we finish. Potentially. Like I said, I'm not saying I know what's happening here. But that's my thought, that our life leaves a shape afterwards. Our essence takes on a particular form when we get to this point. And that shape and that form is a thing that's going to be carried across the threshold in whatever direction it ends up going, whatever way it carries us. So I'd say everything we do matters, not in this moralistic way, but in more of a formative way. And every tattoo we have holds information that's informing that more internal shape. So the changes are happening internally. It's obviously happening externally as well. But we're trying to link and sink into that layer that's beyond the surface, into the substantial. So thinking about why we get tattooed, opposed to what it is that we're going to get tattooed. Thinking about what the internal shape is, opposed to what the external form is of our tattoo, and how they might be influencing each other. Okay, so Tattoo Pathway, there's our mission. Help guide the contemporary tattoo culture, giving a clear pathway so they can engage with it, not get lost in this mainstream, this slipstream. I've got a booth if you want to have a chat about anything. I'm doing a workshop, just live mapping with people tomorrow. And we also have lots of resources for people for the tattoo process online. So if anyone wants to check out our website, tattoopathway.com, you can. And hopefully that has helped you see your tattoos or other people's tattoos in a clearer way. Thanks, everyone.